Donald Trump finds himself at the center of a tussle with none other than the Pope. The American leader has criticized the leader of the Roman Catholic Church over his anti-war stance. The Pope, remember, who's currently on a visit to several African countries, says that he has no fear of the Trump administration. In fact, the pontiff's response, remember, comes to Donald Trump calling the religious leader, quote, terrible for foreign policy.
I have no fear of either the Trump administration. They're speaking out loudly about the message of the gospel. And that's what I believe. I am called to know what the church is called to know. We're not politicians. We're not looking to make foreign policy, as he calls it, with the same perspective that he might understand it. But I do believe that the message of the gospel, the lesson of the peacemakers, is a message the poor needs to hear too.
Donald Trump lashed out at the Catholic leader, claiming that the Pope was in favor of crime and also Iran having a nuclear weapon.
We don't like a Pope that's going to say that it's okay to have a nuclear weapon. We don't want a Pope that says crime is okay in our cities. I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of Pope Leo. He's a very liberal person, and he's a man that doesn't believe in stopping crime. He's a man that doesn't think that we should be toying with a country that wants a nuclear weapon so they can blow up the world. I'm not a fan of Pope Leo.
Now, it's important to clarify here that the pontiff has made no such public statements either on crime or on Iran's so-called nuclear ambition, as touted by Washington. Later, in a post on Truth Social, Donald Trump said that he doesn't want a pope who thinks it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon, who thinks it's terrible that America attacked Venezuela. He also hit back at the Pope for criticizing him, claiming that he was doing exactly what he was elected to do. Now, Donald Trump then went on to share this AI-generated image of himself, dressed in robes and surrounded in divine light, as he appears to be healing a man. But remember, this is not the first time that Trump, who's known for his controversial and rather audacious posts on social media, has shared something like this. In the past as well, the American president had shared this AI-generated image that you see of himself dressed as the Pope. Now, this latest rift follows Pope Leo's repeated criticism of policies and actions in several countries, including the US. The pontiff had previously criticized mass deportations and immigration raids being carried out by the Trump administration, calling it inhumane and contrary to human dignity. Now, more recently, Pope Leo cancelled a planned visit to America and instead met with the migrants. Now, Trump's latest comments and the Pope's response have made the rift more public. The question now is, what kind of an impact will this have on Donald Trump's Christian voter base? Let me welcome on the broadcast Mr. Greg Swenson. He's Chairman, Republicans Overseas UK and International Affairs expert, joining us live from Washington, D.C. Greg, good evening. Welcome to WION. Can I start by asking you what the American president expects a pope to say instead of, end wars and end the bloodshed? What else does the American president Donald Trump expect the leader of a Roman Catholic Church to say?
Yeah, I think the president would wish that it was a bit less biased against him. He takes things personally, and that's just his nature, and he's not afraid to punch back. So I think in this case, the Pope is relatively consistent, as you pointed out, with, past popes, just arguing for peace and, sort of saying the peaceful things or sending a peaceful message. But there's a disconnect between what the popes often say, especially this one, and reality. And I think that the president is just frustrated that, that the mullahs or the regime were weeks away from having a nuclear weapon. They had 60 kilograms of enriched uranium. And I think that's just frustrating for the president. I don't think this is a political winner, but I don't think it's a massive political loser either.
So if it's not a massive political loser or a winner, let me then also ask you how Donald Trump's MAGA voter base is looking at these statements, these harsh words against the Pope. They're deeply religious a lot. They have, in fact, and the entire Trump administration have invoked Christianity, God, Jesus, multiple times. And therefore, how is the voter base now seeing all these statements? What's the sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there'll be a few, especially, devout Catholics, one of which is me, but that could be disappointed in the president's messaging. But again, I don't think most people will take it too seriously. The president is often provocative. He says, things that are controversial. And, sometimes it works, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's not. But I don't think it will affect the base that much. The MAGA base has been pretty consistent with their support for this armed conflict with Iran. So I don't think these comments will move the needle that much. Devout Catholics traditionally have respect for the Pope, but often criticisms of popes, not just Pope Leo, but I think you could say the same for Pope Francis. I think for conservatives, there was much more consistency or collaboration with Pope John Paul II as well as Pope Benedict. But I think that's more on liberal versus conservative rather than religious or not religious.
So you're telling me, Greg, that ahead of the midterm elections, this is not going to have an impact at all on how MAGA approaches the elections, considering the fact that, like you said, Donald Trump takes things personally, and it's fine. People differ in their perceptions and their approaches, but to have a statement like, you're there because you're an American and you should not be supporting Iran's nuclear weapon ambitions, when he's actually not said something like that at all.
Yeah, and I think, look, it's really what happens at the margins. The majority of MAGA voters or Republican voters will stick with the president. If the midterms were tomorrow, I think there might be an effect, because even a 1 or 2 point move can change the outcome of elections. So, but I think thankfully, this war will be ancient history by next November. Now, but I would admit, if you rub a few people the wrong way, even if it's just 1 or 2 points, that can have an effect on close elections. And these elections, could very well be close, especially in the swing states or in the swing districts.
All right, let's wait and see how this moves forward, Greg. I'm glad that you say by next November the war is going to be history, because that's what we thought last week when there was some peace negotiations. That didn't work out, so hopefully the war will end fast. But thanks very much, Greg Swenson, for joining us and sharing your perspective.
Great to be here. Thanks.